Hey, what's going on everyone? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today I am reviewing the Topping DX3 Pro Plus. This is a DAC and headphone amp. You can use this as just a DAC to connect, let's say, a PC to an amplifier, or if you're connecting this to a PC and you want to use your headphones, you can use it just for that. So there's a couple mixed use cases here. I'm going to get into how everything works. But for $200, it actually does quite a bit. Now, the DX3 Pro Plus was sent to me by APOS.Audio. It's just APOS.Audio, not .com. They have a lot of great stuff on their website. They sell a lot of brands, and they have a pretty generous shipping and return policy. So the return policy, it's 45 days, but I want to express this caveat. If you're returning a product between 15 and 45 days, there is a 20% processing fee. So I'm not saying this to cause any issues or anything, but I want you to understand that's how the return policy works. So the first 15 days, no issues. And then obviously if the unit's defective, that's totally different. But they do ship very quickly. And then the reason why I like working with APOS.Audio is because I have personally had a couple times in the past where I bought a more expensive product, some of it being audio from Amazon directly, and it was supposed to be new, but it turned out it wasn't new because someone lied about their own return, and Amazon usually doesn't check it. So you order from places like APOS.Audio to know that when you buy a new product, you're going to get new. They also have a refurbished line that they sell some products for less money, and you know it's refurbished, and they tell you the conditions. So it's one of those things where you just get more of a peace of mind with your purchase, and obviously there's no issues with warranties and things like that. So huge thanks to APOS for sending this to me for review. Won't affect what I say about the product, but I did want to call that out. So the DX3 Pro Plus is a pretty amazing little amp DAC because it's $200, but it has more in common with the DX5 sound profile, obviously for a bit less money, and it's pretty compact as well. The biggest things that stand out for what you lose are the balanced inputs and outputs, and then the front input, the one thing I want to call out is the headphone port is only a 3.5 millimeter. There's no 6.3/1/4 inch, and there's no XLR. Now, instead of reading through all the specs and talking about every single speed and feed, I want to give more of my opinion and user experience, and because you can always read about the specs online. Here's a screenshot of the specs. You can always pause it here if you're curious about what this thing comes with, but I do want to call out the interesting spec of 1800 milliwatts at 32 ohms when you're in high gain mode, so 1.8 watts. That's a ton of power output for such a little amp like this. Now, like other Topping products, the front of the DX3 Pro Plus is graced by a pretty nice looking orange display. I like that it's different, and it's kind of like a signature look from Topping products. Depending on what mode you're in, it's basically going to tell you what your sample rate is if you're in a fixed gain mode, which is basically DAC mode. But if you're in preamp mode, it'll show you your decibel level, basically your gain setting. And that does affect your RCA output in the back, as well, of course, the headphone volume up front. The only real interaction you get is through this volume knob in the front here, which can also be pressed in. So naturally, if you're in any mode that uses the preamp, whether it's headphone or a variable pre-out on the back, you can use that volume knob to adjust it. And as you can hear, it has a really nice clicky sound to it. It feels really, really solid. This whole chassis is metal, so it feels incredibly well made, just like every other Topping product I reviewed in the past. So I really like how it's built. Now, if you single press the volume knob, that's going to toggle through all of your inputs, and you'll see the top of the screen change, you know, whether it's Bluetooth, whether it's USB, coax 1 and 2, or optical, it'll show them all. Then if you double press the volume knob, it'll actually change your output mode. And you have 0, 1, 2, and 3. 2 being your headphones, 3, I guess I should have started in order. 1 is your pre-out, 2 is your headphones, and 3 is both. And if you've set this to be in DAC mode, then when you're on output 1 to do just the RCA, you can no longer adjust the volume because it's sending a fixed 2-volt output out of the rear. Now, on the rear of the DX3, you have a 15-volt input. That's your power input, of course, and it's because this uses an external power supply. That's also how they kept the heat and weight and size so low for this chassis. Above that is an antenna because this actually has Bluetooth 5.0 built into it. Now, the Bluetooth module supports LDAC, and that's thanks to a Qualcomm chip that's on board. But what's really cool about the DX3 Pro Plus is they're shifting the audio processing even from Bluetooth over to an ESS DAC. So you're not using the Qualcomm chip, which works well from a reliability and connection standpoint. I never had issues with that here, but the audio unfolding and decoding, all of that's being processed by the Saber DAC or the ESS DAC. So that's pretty awesome. So moving on, next to the power supply input, you have a USB port. It's a USB 2.0 type B port, and it does support a OTG connection to a mobile phone. So if you buy an adapter that supports an external sound card, that does include Apple devices, you can connect it to there as well. You also have an optical input, which they claim has pretty good jitter reduction. I tested it on my television set and streamed various apps and sources, and I never had any issues with optical. You have 2 coaxial inputs, and again, you can select all of these up front, and then the RCA outputs. Now, like I said, the RCAs can be fixed or variable. If you turn this on and put it in the config mode and switch it to the DAC setting, then that output is constant. Now, you can adjust the settings on the DX3 Pro Plus essentially in 2 different ways. Most of the common stuff that you would adjust, the most frequent things you change, are all in the remote control, which is really cool that this comes with a remote and a $200 amp DAC. So you have your power button, of course, you have your mute, you have your volume up and down, then you have the ability to go forward and back throughout all of your sources. The headphone icon is literally just to enable the headphone jack on the front, which disables the RCA. Line out does the opposite and sends the audio out the rear RCA. FIR is filter. You can toggle through 7 different filters on it. I recommend just seeing if you like any one over the other. Otherwise, you probably can just leave it on the default and be good to go. I found that I think the default is filter 3, and then 2 was the other one that I used a lot. But a couple of them were a little kind of grainy and a little more harsh sounding. But honestly, they're all so similar that unless you're listening to it critically for a long period of time, I don't know how much of a difference you'll hear. So toggle through and see what you like. When you're in headphone mode, pressing the M button is going to toggle through both of your gain settings for the headphone jack up front, which I believe is +6 and +19. Usually you want to leave it on the low gain setting unless you need high gain, because anytime you go to a higher gain, you're technically losing some dynamic range because you're boosting the floor up. So unless you have to have it, leave it off. But again, it's one of those things where if you find that you like the high gain setting more as far as dynamics or overall output, then pick which one you like. I'm not going to tell you there's a right or wrong here. You have your auto, which is handling your automatic power behavior. And then your brightness options, which has 3 fixed brightness between 1, 2, and 3. And then the auto option, basically after about 30 seconds, if you don't like seeing an orange screen on all the time, that display will turn off, and then you'll see a nice little illuminated input at the top, at least so you know what the DAC is set to and that it's on, but the rest of the display is dark. Similar to other topping DACs, in the past ones I've reviewed, they have a power switch on them, so you turn the power switch off, press in and hold the volume button, and then turn the power switch back on, and that's how you get into the settings mode on here. So if for any reason you lost the remote and you were like, I have to fix this setting, pretty much every setting you need can be accessed through that display as a backup. Because this does not have a power switch, you basically just unplug the power supply. Press in and hold the volume knob, then plug the power supply in. It'll turn on, and then you're in settings mode, and then from there you can go ahead with using the volume to press in and to advance through the menus, and then using the volume knob, of course, to change your settings. So let's talk about user experience, and I'm going to start with a couple of the basics. The Bluetooth works incredibly well. Like, I never had a problem, and I got to go well over 50 feet through my phone with no audio dropouts. It's crystal clear, as to be expected with a good Qualcomm chip, so no issues there. And honestly, it sounded really good. A lot of times you pick Bluetooth for the convenience, not so much for the pure audiophile chops. So because this has LDAC, if you have an Android device or a device that is LDAC compliant and you can leverage that, you'd be even harder pressed to hear a difference between that and a USB connection depending on your source. So it's cool that they have that. However, even on the very convenient codec side of phones that don't support LDAC, it actually still sounded quite nice. Now, I mentioned that I used this briefly with optical and it worked totally fine there. However, most of my testing was on the USB DAC side, and that was a mix of both headphones and the large audio system you see behind me. So I'm going to start with the headphone side first, because I think a lot of people are buying something like this primarily for headphone use. And I was really happy with the sound because it's very true and consistent to more of the signature topping sound. It's not doing a lot of stuff to widen the soundstage and make the music sound really snappy and lively, and it's also not making it sound stunted and too warm sounding. It's a very neutral, clinical sound. It's one of those sound profiles where it's almost like it's just reserved, a little bit dark sounding. It's extremely clean, but it's not super flashy and bright and glittery. I don't know how to describe. Some products like kind of wake the music up. Some stuff kills it. And then some stuff just does nothing to it and it passes it cleanly. This is kind of in the middle area where it's not really doing anything to your sound, but it's not making the music sound overly lively either. Again, it's a very reserved, almost slightly dark presentation. The DX3 Pro Plus measures extremely well. So if you're looking at it purely from a total harmonic distortion, synad, You're looking at impulse response measurements, all these numbers. If that's primarily your concern, Topping has been like one of the reigning champs at every price range. They measure incredibly well. Now, when it comes to music or musicality, I guess, that comes down more to your own personal preference and also what gear you're connecting it to. Something like a ZMF Atrium closeback is a little bit warmer and smoother sounding, so you don't want an amp that has a softer, warmer, smooth sound, in my opinion, because it can be too much. So it complements a wide range of things because it's more of a clinical execution of sound and not so much colorizing it in a way to make it come to a life more than your traditional flat in and out sound profile, I guess. I'm not saying it in a negative sense, but don't expect this thing to do wonders to your sound system and totally change the sound signature. That's not why you buy a DAC like this. If you're looking something that's a little bit more forward and engaging, something like the Magni Modi stack is going to be a little bit more money. I think it's about $220 or $230 before even getting the RCA cable to connect the two of them. But that would be the only logical upgrade if you're just thinking purely from a musicality standpoint. Then you have the fact that those don't have Bluetooth, and it's just, in my personal experience, I was going to save this for the end, but I want to say this about Topping. I've never had a Topping issue give me glitches or issues with my user experience. So it's one thing to talk about the sound quality, but I don't have like static or popping issues or weird problems with my volume knob. I don't turn it on and for some reason my computer's not detecting the DAC. My Bluetooth's not glitching in this case because this was my first Topping product with Bluetooth. So this is more of what you're getting out of the box, and it's going to do that day in and day out. It's not doing anything crazy. I think the Magni Modi stack is a fun stack from a musicality standpoint, but this is actually giving you more stuff for less money in a more compact chassis. Now the DAC sound quality or sound signature becomes more apparent when you listen to it on a larger scale audio system. So just to quickly touch on this, my audio system behind me, I have two different amplifiers that I switch between right now. One of them is the APOS.Audio Stellar Strata, which is a pure solid state integrated amp. It's about $3,000, and I think it's 200 watts times 2 if I'm not mistaken. Then I have the Vincent Audio SV228. That is a hybrid tube integrated amplifier, which has a tube stage on the preamp side and then solid state on the output. And the speakers are the Alta Audio Atom speakers, which I'll be reviewing soon. I've been just breaking those in and using those systems for quite a while now. What I noticed compared to some other DACs that I have, and this is even going all the way up to Denafrips, is this doesn't have the same depth or stage that higher end DACs do. So that's to be expected considering everything that's getting jammed into a little $200 chassis. But if you're investing in a really high-end sound system, a lot of people are going to tell you a DAC is a DAC because you're just taking a digital signal and giving it an analog conversion for your amplifiers. And that can be true to an extent because it depends on what your ear can hear and what your sound system is. But I didn't get the same sets of depth and width on my sound. It kind of stunted everything a little bit compared to higher end stuff. Now it's very comparable to $100 to $200 amp DACs in this price range. And I have stuff to compare it to between dongle DACs, which are like $100. I've compared this to my hifi stacks. And it's really, again, that whole clinical, darker sound to it. It has a sense of like bite. Like it's going to deliver the song in a fairly speedy way. It sounds like it's fast, but there's not a lot of like breadth to that sound. It's not like as heavy or full sounding as a more expensive, more premium product. Topping makes higher end DACs. Like you get the D90 if you want more of a musicality of the sound, and that's giving you balance and all this other stuff. So I don't want to paint the picture of this is all you need even on a high-end system. And it also depends on what you're pairing it to. The Vincent Audio has a tube preamp stage, and I don't feel this paired as well with that amp. It actually hurt some of the bass performance and texture of the sound that I got with that. But on my Stellar Strata, which was purely digital, that has a slightly cleaner, more analytical sound profile. It's a little bit more forward than my Vincent amp. And this paired nicely with that. It didn't hold back the Stellar sound signature. So it depends on your pairing. And that's why it's important to, I guess, watch videos like this, but also just hear for yourself and see what you like after a while. I didn't dislike it, and again, from a usability standpoint, I thought it was great. All right, so in closing, I'd like to wrap with this. Now, this is $200, and at $200, if you don't care about the single 3.5 millimeter out with no 1/4 inch or balanced and no balanced outs on the back, which a lot of people don't use. I wish this was a 1/4 inch just because I think a lot more headphones come with that, and not many people have a step down from the 6.3 millimeter to the 3.5. So if it was just a 1/4 inch, I think it would have been perfect, because at $200, it's giving you a really solid DAC, a great Bluetooth connection, and you really just don't get this type of amplifier power at $200 in an all-in-one unit with a DAC, period. It doesn't even matter about the whole musicality thing. There's just not really any product that's touching this level of performance and feature set, as long as this feature set being that physical connection is not an issue for you. So I think this DAC is going to please a lot of people. This is really end game for a lot of people. It works well with IEMs too, especially on the low gain mode. You can drive anything. The output impedance is so low that it doesn't matter what you connect to it. So it's versatile, it's capable, it's powerful, and I love how compact it is, because if your desk space is at a premium, it's nice. And then the metal box, obviously it's built well, but I like that it's matte. It's not like this glossy thing that's going to look bad after a long period of time of ownership. So anyway, I hope you found the review helpful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you like the content and you're new here. I will have links in the description below to help you find this DAC. It'll take you to APOS.Audio, so you can check out that website. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.